Welcome to the deep dive. You're tuning in because, like us, you want to get past the headlines and really understand what's happening.
Right. No noise, just the signal.
Exactly. And today we're zeroing in on a giant in the tech world, AMD, Advanced Micro Devices.
We've been digging into their latest financials, the 2024 annual report, that's the 10K.
And the first quarter of 2025, the 10Q, plus the transcript from their recent earnings call.
Yeah, lots of material. Our goal here is really to pull out the crucial bits, maybe some surprising facts.
And give you a clear view of where AMD is right now and, where they might be headed. That's the mission.
Think of it like we've got the map, these dense reports. We're just pointing out the important stuff, the big revenue climbs, the profit picture.
Sure. The strategic moves they're making and maybe some potential potholes they see coming.
Exactly. Potential bumps in the road.
Okay, let's get into it. If you're following tech, especially anything related to data centers or AI, and who isn't these days, you need to know AMD's position.
Absolutely critical. And we promise we're not going to just read financial statements at you.
No, definitely not. We'll spotlight what really matters. Think of this as your fast track to getting up to speed.
And there's some genuinely interesting stuff in here, especially, I think, the data center growth. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, and how that whole AI demand wave is playing out for them. Okay, let's start big picture. Finances, 2024 overall.
Right. So 2024 net revenue climbed 14%, came in at $25.8 billion, up from $22.7 billion a year before.
A solid jump. But what was really driving that?
Well, it's mainly two segments. Data center was the real powerhouse. Revenue there just exploded, up 94%.
94%. Wow. Okay. That's huge. To $12.6 billion.
It's huge. And the client segment, think Ryzen chips for PCs, laptops, that was also strong, up 52% to $7.1 billion.
Okay, so data center and client carrying the load. What about the other parts?
Yeah, it wasn't across-the-board growth. Gaming actually saw a pretty big drop in revenue, down 58%.
58. Why so much?
Mostly lower sales of what they call semi-custom products.
Yeah.
That's mainly chips for game consoles. Think, PlayStation, Xbox. So that reflects console cycles.
Ah, okay. Makes sense. And embedded.
Embedded was also down by 33%. Seems like customers there were just working through existing inventory, kind of balancing things out after maybe buying too much before.
Right, the inventory normalization we hear about. Okay, so that's 2024. What about the start of this year, Q1 2025?
The momentum definitely continued, maybe even accelerated. Net revenue was up 36% compared to Q1 last year.
36% year over year to $7.438 billion.
Yep. And importantly, gross profit was up significantly too.
And the margin story, how's that looking?
Actually, really good. Gross margin expanded year over year again in Q1. That makes it 5 quarters in a row.
5 straight quarters of margin expansion. What's behind that?
Two things mainly. Selling more of those high-value data center products and also a richer mix of Ryzen processors, basically selling more of the expensive higher-margin chips. Got it. Higher ASPs, essentially, and that flows through to the bottom line.
It did. Net income jumped 55% in Q1. So, yeah, the overall financial health seems pretty robust.
Okay, good baseline. Let's dig into those segments now. Data center, obviously the star performer. 94% growth in 24.
Yeah, just incredible. Driven by both their Instinct GPUs, those are for AI and high-performance computing, and their EPYC server CPUs.
And Q1 25 kept that fire going.
It did. Data center revenue up another 57% year over year in Q1. It really looks like their latest EPYC chips, the 5th-gen Turin ones, are making inroads, gaining share.
Who's buying them? Any specific names?
Oh, yeah. The earnings call mentioned all the big hyperscalers, Alibaba, AWS, Google, Oracle, Tencent. They're all launching new services based on EPYC.
So real adoption by the major cloud players.
Absolutely. And it's not just CPUs. AWS, for example, is using EPYC with Xilinx FPGAs. Remember, AMD bought Xilinx.
Right, the FPGA angle.
Yeah.
For accelerated computing.
Exactly. That synergy seems to be paying off. But let's be real, the biggest buzz is AI, right? The Instinct GPUs, like the MI300X.
Undeniably. That's where the intense demand is. And AMD knows it. They're speeding up their roadmap.
What does that mean, speeding up?
We're talking about an annual cadence now, a new generation of top-tier AI chips every year. The next big one is the MI400 series, planned for next year.
MI400, what's special about that?
Designed for both training and inferencing AI models. And actually, early customer feedback is very positive. This could be their big move to really challenge NVIDIA more directly in that high-end AI space.
Okay, sounds promising. But there's a catch, isn't there? Something about China.
Ah, yeah. The elephant in the room. U.S. export restrictions, they limit sales of certain advanced chips to China, Hong Kong, Macau, and some other countries.
And that hits AMD.
It does, specifically their MI308 product. They're bracing for a potential hit of around $800 million in inventory write-offs related to this.
Ouch. 800 million. That's significant.
Yeah, and part of a broader $1.5 billion impact they expect, mostly hitting in Q2 and Q3 of this year, 2025. So definitely a headwind.
But even with that China issue, they still expect growth in data center GPUs this year.
They do. Strong double-digit growth is still the forecast for the data center GPU business overall in 2025.
Okay.
But it'll be weighted towards the second half of the year. That's partly tied to the launch of another product, the MI355.
So a bump, but the underlying demand trend is still strong.
Got it. Let's switch gears to client, PCs and laptops. Strong 24, strong Q1 25 year-over-year growth, right? 67%.
Yeah, year-over-year Q1 looked great. But compared to the previous quarter, Q4 of 2024, revenue was actually pretty flat.
Flat. How does that work with 67% year-over-year growth?
Well, this is interesting. On the earnings call, they explained that the actual number of chips sold, the units, went down by double digits in Q1 compared to Q4.
So they sold fewer chips, but revenue stayed flat. Higher average selling prices. ASPs went up. That richer mix we talked about earlier, they sold more of their premium, higher-priced Ryzen processors.
Okay, so fewer units, but better quality units, basically, or higher-priced ones.
Exactly, which kept the revenue steady sequentially. But it does raise a question,
Like what?
well, are they gaining real share if units are down sequentially? And with some of that Q1 strength, maybe customers pulling orders forward. Plus, you have the usual PC market seasonality to think about.
Right. The second half is usually stronger for PC sales. Okay, something to watch. What about gaming? Tough 2024.
Yeah, that 58% revenue drop was rough, mostly down to those semi-custom console chip sales declining.
Are they doing anything to kind of boost that segment?
Well, on the technology side, yes. They just announced FSR 4, Fidelity FX Super Resolution 4.
Okay. What is that?
It's their first upscaling tech that uses machine learning, like NVIDIA's DLSS, basically. The idea is to give you much higher frame rates in games.
Using AI for better graphics performance.
Exactly. They say it's in over 30 games already, aiming for 75 by year-end. Could be a nice differentiator for Radeon GPUs.
Okay, interesting. Lastly, embedded. Down in 24 and Q1 25, just inventory adjustments.
That seems to be the main story. Customers just working through the stock they already had.
But they expect a recovery.
Yeah, they're forecasting a return to growth in the second half of 2025, driven by demand picking up in areas like test and measurement equipment, communications infrastructure, aerospace.
And they've got new products there, too.
They started shipping some new FPGAs, the Spartan UltraScale Plus, and also second-gen Versal AI Edge chips. That's AI processing for devices outside the data center.
Edge AI, right?
And also new EPYC embedded CPUs. Cisco's using them in networking gear, IBM's using them in big storage systems for analytics and AI.
So embedded EPYC is getting traction, too.
Seems like it. Plus, they updated their Vitis AI software to help developers build those edge AI applications.
Okay, so summing up the segments. Data center and client are strong, though client has some nuances. Gaming had a tough 24, but has FSR 4 coming. Embedded dipped, but expects recovery.
That's a pretty good summary. Now, beyond the segments, let's talk strategy. Big moves. That ZT Systems acquisition seems key.
Right. That just closed end of March. Almost $5 billion. What's the thinking there?
It's all about AI infrastructure. ZT Systems helps build and deploy servers, particularly for cloud providers. Buying them lets AMD offer more complete end-to-end AI solutions.
So moving beyond just selling the chips.
Exactly. Getting involved in designing and deploying the whole AMD-powered system at scale. It's about getting closer to those big cloud customers and offering a more integrated package. A pretty significant strategic shift, I think.
Makes sense. But I heard they want to sell off the manufacturing part of ZT.
That's right. They're looking for a strategic partner to take over the manufacturing side. Suggests AMD wants to focus on the design, the integration, the software, not the factory floor itself.
Okay. And strategy-wise, they're still pumping money into R&D.
Oh, absolutely. Huge sustained investments there. You have to in this business, especially with AI moving so fast.
Yeah.
That's critical for staying competitive.
They talk about a pervasive AI strategy. What does that actually mean? Sounds like marketing speak.
Well, maybe a bit.
Yeah.
But the idea is to put AI capabilities everywhere, not just in the giant data center GPUs.
So AI in Ryzen chips, AI in embedded products.
Exactly. Developing the hardware and the software tools so customers can use AMD tech for AI across all kinds of applications, from the cloud right down to the edge device. It's about making AI accessible on their platforms.
Okay, that makes more sense than just pervasive. It's about breadth.
Right. Breadth of AI capability.
Anything else on the strategic or corporate side? They mentioned corporate responsibility stuff in the 10K.
Yeah, they touch on environmental goals, diversity, inclusion.
Mm,
Standard stuff these days, but important for stakeholders, investors, shows they're paying attention to those broader expectations.
got it. And they still have that stock buyback program active.
Yep. About $3.9 billion left authorized as of the end of Q1. So a tool they could use to return cash to shareholders.
Okay. Now we have to talk risks. No company analysis is complete without it. What are they flagging?
Unsurprisingly, competition is number one. They explicitly name Intel for CPUs and NVIDIA for GPUs.
Acknowledging the fight they're in.
No kidding. Intense rivals. They also stress how vital it is to get new products out on time, especially with tech shifting so fast, like with AI. Any delay or misstep there could really hurt.
Yeah, you can't afford to miss a cycle. What else?
Broader economic uncertainty, global trade policies that ties back to the China restrictions we discussed,
Right. Geopolitics impacting business.
and risks around acquisitions. Integrating ZT systems smoothly is a challenge. Plus, potential write-downs on goodwill from past deals if things don't pan out. Standard stuff, but worth noting.
Did the earnings call add any color to these risks or the outlook?
Well, the executives sounded pretty confident about hitting strong growth this year, 2025, despite the economic worries and the trade issues.
What gives them that confidence?
They pointed to their product portfolio, saying it's strong and differentiated, and their ability to execute on their plans. Basically, we think our stuff is good, and we can deliver.
They reiterated that second half waiting for data center GPUs.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Linked to new product timing, like that MI355. And they also clarified the client segment growth drivers again.
The ASP increased, not unit volume in Q1.
Exactly, making sure analysts understood it was about mix and pricing power in that quarter.
Did they talk much about their really long-term AI vision
Yeah.
beyond MI400?
Some discussion about rack scale solutions, thinking about the whole data center rack as the computing unit and working closely with hyperscalers and OEMs to build those out.
What about competition from customers building their own chips, like Google TPUs or Amazon's chips?
Yeah, they touched on that. Acknowledged that custom silicon is a factor. Their response seems to be focus on delivering the absolute leading edge merchant silicon and build a strong software ecosystem around it so it's compelling even for those big customers.
Offer something they can't easily build themselves or that integrates better.
Sort of. Provide performance leadership and a broad ecosystem advantage.
Okay. So let's try to wrap this all up. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive into AMD's world?
Well, first, strong growth overall, especially financially. Second, the data center segment is just on fire, largely thanks to AI demand. That's the engine right now.
Third, that ZT Systems acquisition looks like a really important strategic pivot towards more integrated AI solutions.
Yep. Then fourth, you've got the other segments with their own stories, gaming needing a boost from FSR4, embedded looking towards a second-half recovery.
And fifth, can't ignore the risks, competition, execution, and especially those China export rules creating a definite headwind.
But despite those headwinds, the overall message seems to be continued strong growth expected for 2025, particularly accelerating later in the year.
Yeah, the aha moment for me is just seeing how aggressively AMD is maneuvering to capture a bigger piece of this massive AI market. It's not just talk. The product roadmap, the acquisition, they're making serious plays. It feels like they smell blood in the water or maybe just huge opportunity.
Definitely smells like opportunity. And for you, listening in, understanding AMD's position gives you, I think, a really valuable lens on the entire tech landscape right now. These trends impact everything.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so as we finish up, here's something to chew on. We see this incredibly dynamic AI space, fierce competition from NVIDIA, Intel waking up, and big customers doing their own thing. Looking ahead, what's going to be the single most critical factor for AMD's long-term success in AI? Is it pure chip performance, software, partnerships, something else?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. Something to keep thinking about as this all unfolds. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.